The truth and lies about self-publishing. Here's an article I saw, or a post on Reddit, that they've deleted their username, but they call it the truth about self-publishing. And as you'll see, it's a very cynical approach, very jaded viewpoint on self-publishing. At the same time, there's some great points that we can extract from what this person posted. So skipping to the end, they spent over 10K coming up with this information. So my assumption is they invested $10,000 in publishing through different things and probably didn't get the best results, would be my guess. So let's go through this point by point. And you might not be this cynical about it. At the same time, you can get some deeper lessons on how to think about your business as an author. And that's a key point. You have a business, and it's not just about publishing books and making some book sales. So first of all, almost all our books won't make back the editor fee. Bye $2,000 plus. Well, I mean, statistically speaking, a lot of authors, and this comes back to point number 3 as well, which we'll get to in a moment. A lot of authors probably won't make back a couple $1,000s from their books. Now, at the same time, $2,000, quite a bit to invest in an editor. It's not unheard of, for a good editor, but it's a little bit up there. And I would have a different approach that I get to in a moment when it comes to how to get started if you're on a relatively limited budget. Then it says, here's an interesting way of thinking. AMS, Facebook ads don't work. The bids are too high and only sustainable for big fish and or traditional publishers. And I say this interesting. I don't call this a lie. It's a partial truth. And that is what will get people stuck more than anything else, are partial truths. Because you could absolutely point out example after example of AMS, which is Amazon ads, not working. I can point out plenty of examples of Facebook ads not working. And there are instances where an author could do everything right, and it doesn't work. It doesn't generate them a positive return or any sales. The question is, why? Why did it not work? And even before that, all you have to do is ask yourself this one question. Has anyone ever succeeded with Amazon ads or Facebook ads? The answer is yes. And you might go, oh, yeah, but that's the big fish or the traditional publishers. Okay. Has any self-published author succeeded? Has any brand new author succeeded? Yes, it's possible. Okay. But it's not going to be for everyone. This is why you got to have some nuance and you look at the context. Why would the ads not work? Well, what was your cover design? Like, let's say this person, I'm guessing, ran AMS and Facebook ads and they didn't work. What was your cover design? What was your description? How many reviews did you have? What was your price point? What was the competition? What was your bidding strategy? How were you optimizing and adjusting these things, right? There's a lot of variables. And I know firsthand, running Facebook ads for things beyond books, like courses and stuff, there's a lot of variables to adjust. And it takes time sometimes before it even starts to generate a return. And sometimes even then it takes a loss. Here we go, though, in looking bigger picture, where you got to go, okay, but is that okay to take a loss on the front end? Because maybe you take a loss selling a book, but now you get a fan for life who buys other books. Or if you offer coaching or courses or things like that, maybe you'll spend money on Facebook ads or Amazon ads, take a loss on the front end, but make the money on the back end. This is why you got to have this bigger picture strategy and business plan. It's not the tactic or the specific, oh, it's Facebook ads or it's Amazon ads. It's what's the bigger picture. And even then, there's authors who I would talk to and I go, yeah, I like Amazon ads, but for your book, doesn't make sense. Or only put in, $1 or $2 a day, or expect to take a loss on it and just use it to build your fan base or whatever it is. And this is where you got to think a little deeper. The third point, making a living is ridiculously hard. Most of us only make a few $100s a year. Well, again, true. It's going to be true from a statistical standpoint that most authors will only make a few $100s a year, maybe less than that, right? Pareto principle. It's the 80-20 rule, which 20% of authors or books will make 80% of the royalties and revenue, right? Now that's an approximation, but it breaks down. And this is true across almost any industry. If you're going to get into business, most businesses fail. Doesn't matter what business. You could start a restaurant. A lot of restaurants are going to fail, right? So it does take a certain mentality going into this, understanding that there's going to be time, a learning curve. You're probably not going to make money. You might even, quote unquote, lose money in the initial short term. I've been through this. I think just about every business owner and author who is successful and has achieved these bigger incomes, they will look back and say, yeah, my first books didn't take off right out of the gate. Or if they did, maybe they had already built a bigger business and following before that, right? So if you're going in expecting to make a living through book publishing, it's not what I would recommend. Going in thinking I'm just going to publish books and this will be how I make my living. I went in going, I'm going to publish books. If they sell, great. That they were part of a bigger business strategy, meaning it was part of building an audience, building a fan base, branding myself. And for many people, if you want to make a living with writing, the initial way of doing that is usually going to be writing for other people. That could be ghostwriting. I even to this day do copywriting as a service, right? You might do editing work, proofreading work, so if you want to make a living, you can offer services. And then when you launch your own assets, which is like a book, then understand that that's going to take some time. So for many people, I actually don't recommend the asset creation approach, which is like publishing books, until after you have a pretty solid level of income, so that you can actually support this business venture that you're doing, and also be okay if you don't initially see results, or even don't see results at all. So that gives you room to test different things. And this will take us to point number 4. Derek, let's just say you're going, Derek, what if I have a limited budget and I really want to publish a book? Well, let's look at what this person says. Only way to succeed is to write a bunch of books as cheaply as possible, cheap covers, no editing, and wait until one either goes viral or you have enough books on the backlist to make money. Anything else will just lose money. Again, we get this kind of all or nothing. Anything else will lose you money. Well, I didn't take that approach. A lot of other people didn't take that approach and somehow managed to make money. So maybe that was just, because it's not the most current, up to date, as of 24 days ago experience. So let's just look at this, though. There is truth. Again, we have partial truth in here about having books in a backlist. Yes, that can be helpful. Books in a backlist or other things in a catalog beyond the book to make income. That is important. And chances are you might not start to see a return until you have maybe multiple books out there, or at least until you've given it enough time for a first book to really gain momentum and popularity. But let's look at this. Write a bunch of books as cheaply as possible. Now, I imagine if you're following me, you probably wouldn't take this approach. You'd probably see the stupidity of this, and that if you have cheap covers and no editing, the odds of any one of those going viral is slim to none. Okay, there's exceptions to everything. I'll point out there are going to be books that have a cheap cover and no editing and could succeed. So to be fair, that is possible, but it's unlikely. And you could say, well, Derek, it's also unlikely to make more than a few $100s a year. Okay, sure. But I'm all about, how do you be the exception? Okay, how can you be the exception? Not the typical, but that 5%, that at least the top 20% or top 5%. And that's not going to be by having cheap covers and no editing. Let's say you're on a budget, though. What could you do? Well, let's look at a fiction author. I did an interview with a couple authors, and they got started writing a short story that they built out on Wattpad. Now, Wattpad is a free platform where you can write short stories and things like that and build a following. And I believe it might have been with Netflix or some other company. They got some deal from their story. Okay, so that was free publishing, right? Going on a platform like Wattpad, publishing it for free. So I do agree with the concept of testing ideas, validating ideas before you drop thousands and thousands of dollars into the asset. That's why I go, like, it's not necessarily the first step I would take. You might put out different short stories for free. Okay. And if you go on a platform like Wattpad, people might be a little bit more forgiving if it doesn't have, perfect editing, right? People might be more forgiving if there's not really going to be a cover on there. Okay. So you can validate ideas, you can build an audience, even in some cases, maybe even get a deal somewhere from either a traditional publisher or, someone that wants to buy the rights to the story, things like that. And there's ways to do that on free platforms. Okay. And so there are some writers who I'm like, why not just why are you starting with publishing a book? I am a book marketing guy, but even I can step back and go, ultimately, I'm a business consultant. And so I look at the business strategy and I go, yeah, in some cases, it doesn't make sense to self-publish a book right now, maybe later, but perhaps there's another strategy that you take now to validate your ideas and validate your stories and build the fan base. Let's go with nonfiction. I learned, one of my mentors, Kamanzi Constable, taught me how to get on success.com and entrepreneur.com. So let's say you're a thought leader, you're an expert. Maybe instead of publishing a book, if you've yet to build an audience, you go out there and you start writing articles, you do podcast interviews, you do these things where you can be sharing your information, sharing, blog articles or different concepts, seeing what resonates. Then you see something that like hits it big, and then you develop a book from that. So there are some traditionally published books that have become big books that originally started out as a blog article that went viral. Okay. So if you want to do something cheap, that would be my approach. I wouldn't publish books cheap. I would do something else to validate the idea and then publish it. Okay. So this is where I wanted to point this out, because you can see there's like these kernels of partial truths mixed with like just really silly strategy, like publish books. No, there's some better strategies for this. And so ultimately, what you're seeing here is someone who has like their a certain validity to their feelings. They want to vent, they want to talk about these things. And at the same time, I would say that they're not seeing the bigger picture. And I want you to see the bigger picture and think more strategically. And then so we get into point number 5. Everything else is lies. Everything else is lies. Really? Why? Maybe that's the case. I would hope I've proven to you that there are some legitimate ideas that go beyond the scope of what this person's pointing out. To get you to buy a marketing course, or people who live on the dreams of authors, editors, consultants, etc. If these services are guaranteed to make you money, as these service providers claim, have them work on a royalty share. They'll leave so fast, you'll feel the hurricane in the wind. So let's look at this. If these services are guaranteed to make money, as these service providers claim. Now, I actually don't see a lot of services that guarantee you make money, or at least make a profit. I certainly don't make that guarantee, but I'm sure some people do, in which case you would rightfully be skeptical. Although if they say, hey, we have a guarantee, they would probably qualify you in some way. If someone can guarantee you make money and they don't do any qualification about, well, what's your manuscript? What's the quality? Who are you writing for? Do you have any following or not? Anything like that. Yeah, I wouldn't trust anyone who guarantees you can make money if they haven't actually validated your book. Because if someone comes to me and goes, Derek, I got this book on ant farming or whatever. Can you guarantee I'm going to make money for it? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if there's any demand for, ant farming books or whatever. So you want to make sure, if you're going with a service provider, that if they are offering any guarantees, they would likely want to qualify you. But let's look at this. Have them work on a royalty share. Well, isn't this what a traditional publisher is? Right? Doesn't a traditional publisher take a stake in the author's book? Right? So this is the thing. The fact that you're going into self-publishing means you're taking personal responsibility. At the same time, even with a traditional publisher, they expect the author to do a lot of the work. In fact, the majority of the marketing work. And it's the same thing with me. I would categorize myself as a marketing consultant. Why do I not do a royalty share type of deal? Well, I actually have done a type of deal where I did ads for some authors years ago. And I said, if these ads don't make you money, you don't have to pay me anything, and I had to qualify them. I had to only do it for a select few books. Right. And then, you get people mad at you because it's like, well, you didn't select my book. And so it's like, you got this other issue to deal with. But let's look at this in the sense that whether it's a consultant, an editor, a service, a hybrid publisher, a traditional publisher, anything like that, why does it not necessarily make sense to do a royalty share? And I can tell you from my perspective, I don't know what this author is going to do. Right now, I have to sit there and read every single manuscript that comes into me. And then let's say I teach you how to get booked on podcasts, which is something I do teach on. Are you actually going to go on the podcast? Are you going to do the outreach? Are you going to train yourself on how to speak well on a podcast? Not to say this is the only way you have to promote yourself in your book, but you see, that's the author's responsibility, right? And a lot of there's a mentality out there from some authors, which is like, I just want someone else to handle the marketing for me. Or if what they teach works, then I should just, push these buttons and then my book will start selling, without realizing so much of the sale is on the author's shoulders, right? And it's their responsibility. So for me, I've put in tens of thousands of dollars to train myself just on speaking. Okay, just on my speaking abilities and presentation abilities. So if I were to hire a company, a publicity company that gets me booked on television or podcasts or radio or these different things, that's the marketing side. If they're doing their job is, did I actually get booked on these places? Whether I make sales or not, I still take the responsibility for that, because I go, did I have the message to market match? Did I create a good offer for this audience? Was I compelling in my presentation? So on and so forth. If you're on my newsletter, I'm emailing almost every single day. Are you engaging with your audience? These marketing consultants and these companies and these publishers, they can't guarantee that you're going to do the work on your end to actually drive book sales. And if I'm going to do all the work for someone else, I might as well just do it for myself and get 100% of the royalties instead of splitting it with someone else. It doesn't really make sense. And this is an issue I see a lot of times where they think they're like playing, I gotcha. oh, if you believe in it so much, then you would split the royalties. Well, no, I know how much work it takes. And if I'm going to do all the work for you, I might as well just do it for my own books instead of just doing it for a book I'm only going to get, a fraction of the royalties on. The ultimate take home point is this might all be obvious to you. The key thing, though, is think on a deeper level. Think about the strategy. And if you ever hear someone say, this thing works, it doesn't work, this is the way it is, start to just unpack it a little bit more. AMS ads don't work. Well, when do they work? When do they not work? There's a partial truth that they don't work. I don't recommend them for everyone. Plenty of cases where they do work. You want to have multiple books in your backlist. Well, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's not. Is the only way to be successful, publish a bunch of books and hope one takes off? Or are there other strategies like putting out free content, putting out, different things where you can test the waters first before investing a bunch of money into publishing? And I think that's one of the biggest final takeaways I want to leave you with from this. I don't mean this to just be a rant. I want there to be some practical information. So if you are on a limited budget, you don't want to drop 10K and not have anything to show for it. Well, I don't know any way to not invest some money into it. So I would recommend having a source of income. That's your main source of income. And then going into publishing with an attitude that, yeah, this might not make money. That was my attitude. When I published my third book that took off, I didn't know if it was going to sell or not. But I thought to myself, I still want to get this book out there, whether or not it sells. And I'm fortunate that it did sell. And I've learned since then strategies to get consistent sales. But I also believe in being, strategic about this, where you go, maybe I'm not going to drop $10,000 into this until I validate some ideas first. Maybe you build up a fan base first using free and low cost strategies. Then once you have a little more certainty that, hey, I got this idea that really seems to be resonating with people, I have this expendable income that I can invest, now I'm ready to really launch and go hard with this book. Okay. So love to know any of your thoughts. Feel free to comment or reply and let me know what you think about the truth and lies and what's been your experience with self-publishing.